Do you ever feel caught in that modern dilemma, that constant tug of war between craving quiet space for deep thought and then just the relentless demands of, social stuff or just information overload?
Oh, absolutely. It's a constant juggling act, isn't it?
Yeah, you try to focus, but then the phone buzzes or an email pops up,
Mm.
and suddenly you're just drowning in digital noise. It feels like being pulled in 1,000 directions.
It's a very real tension, wanting to be connected, informed, but also needing that inner calm, that clarity. So many of us feel that.
Exactly. That's the tension we're kind of grappling with today. And what's amazing is there's this ancient text, the Mahāsuññatasuttaṃ, the great discourse on emptiness, that speaks directly to this. It's from the Buddhist tradition.
A really profound source.
Totally. And our mission for this deep dive is basically to pull out some practical, timeless wisdom from it. Stuff that can help you, the listener, navigate staying informed and insightful even with everything buzzing around. We want to explore what deep inner peace really means and, how to protect it.
It sounds like a worthwhile exploration. Where does the text start?
Okay, so let's set the scene. It opens in Kapilavatthu. The Buddha is visiting this monastery, Kalgamaka's place, and right away he notices something. Lots of beds, lots of seats set up. It looks, well, busy.
Like a hub of activity.
Exactly. So he turns to his attendant, Ananda, and asks, basically, is it crowded here?
And Ananda says, yeah, lots of monks. He explains it's robe-making time. So a period of communal work, lots of interaction.
Right. And this is where the Buddha makes this really striking observation. He says a monk, a bhikkhu, doesn't really look good, that's the phrase, doesn't thrive when they're constantly delighting in company, devoted to groups, finding joy in being social, essentially.
He uses the term ganarmo, delighting in groups.
Yeah.
And it's a direct statement about the cost of that constant busyness.
Yeah, what is the cost, according to the text?
Well, the Buddha is very clear. That monk will not easily find the happiness that comes from renunciation or from seclusion, pavivekasukha, or tranquility, or even enlightenment itself.
Wow, that's quite direct.
It is. The core idea is that just like those monks found distraction in their communal work, our modern crowds, social media, notifications, the pressure to be always on, can really block our path to inner peace and genuine insight.
That's a really strong parallel, and he pushes it further, right? Saying someone delighting in company won't get even temporary liberation of mind, but someone living alone can.
A very stark contrast. It really emphasizes the value placed on, well, not necessarily physical solitude, but a certain kind of mental space.
Okay, but why? Why is being less social in that sense so crucial for these deep states?
Here's a key point, and maybe a surprising one. The Buddha says he sees no single form, no thing, no experience, no person, that if you delight in it, you won't eventually feel sorrow, pain, distress when it changes, because everything changes.
Right, the impermanence of things.
Exactly. And our delight, our attachment, sets us up for suffering when that change inevitably happens. That's the setup for understanding emptiness. The suffering isn't inherent in the form, but in our reaction to its changing nature.
Okay, so if attachment to changing things causes suffering, how do you actually live free from that? What's the alternative?
This is where the Buddha shares his own practice, his preferred way of being. He says he dwells by attaining and abiding in internal emptiness, ajata suññatā, by basically not attending to any signs or perceptions.
Not attending to signs. What does that mean practically? Like ignoring everything.
Not exactly ignoring, more like a profound detachment from the usual pull of external stimuli. It's about cultivating an inner state that isn't constantly snagged by what's happening outside. It's an internal focus.
So it's less about being physically alone and more about this inner state.
Precisely, and the text shows this. Even when the Buddha is in this state of deep internal emptiness and people come to see him, monks, nuns, kings, ministers, whoever, his mind stays inclined towards seclusion. It's biased towards renunciation. It doesn't get pulled into the social interaction in the same way.
And then there's that detail about how he speaks to them. It says he speaks only words related to dispatching them. That sounds a bit abrupt.
It can sound that way to us, yeah. But the text implies it isn't about being rude. It's about fiercely protecting that mental state. That deep insight requires a certain environment internally. He's not getting drawn into idle chat because that would disrupt the stillness.
Okay, so he's prioritizing that inner clarity above conventional politeness, in a way.
You could say that. It highlights the seriousness of the practice. And the call to action for anyone wanting to achieve this is clear. You have to actively establish, settle, unify, and concentrate your mind internally. It takes deliberate effort.
Right. So how do you actually do that? How do you establish and settle the mind like that?
The text gives a method, the practice of the 4 jhanas. These are states of deep meditative absorption. It's a training.
Okay, can you unpack those a bit? What are they like?
Sure. Think of it like stages of deepening focus. The first jhana involves detachment from sensual stuff and unhelpful thoughts. There's still some thinking, but it's focused. And it comes with this feeling of rapture and pleasure born from that seclusion.
Okay, focus, joy. What's next?
The second jhana goes deeper. You get internal serenity. The mind becomes really unified. Now, the initial thinking drops away. It's just concentration, rapture, pleasure, but quieter, more settled.
Interesting. And the third?
Third jhana brings in strong equanimity. You're mindful, discerning. You still experience pleasure, but it's perceived with the body, with this sense of balance, not getting carried away by it.
Like a stable pleasure.
Yeah, exactly. And finally, the fourth jhana is described as beyond pleasure and pain altogether. Just pure mindfulness, pure equanimity. It's a very refined state. It's like mental gymnastics at an Olympic level.
That's quite a path. It sounds very structured.
It is. And what's also really interesting is how the text describes the practice of getting there. It's iterative. It says, when you first try to mind internal emptiness, your mind might not settle into it right away. It might not feel firm or liberated.
Okay, so what happens then? You just fail.
No, not at all. You simply recognize it. You acknowledge, okay, my mind isn't quite there yet. It's about honest self-assessment. No judgment, just seeing what is.
Right. So awareness first. Then what?
Then the practice expands. If internal emptiness isn't working, you try applying the same mindful detachment to external emptiness, then maybe both internal and external, then even to this state called the imperturbable, or unwholesome.
So you try different angles on emptiness?
Kind of, but here's the really key instruction, a memorable detail. If your mind still doesn't settle or feel liberated after trying these variations,
What do?
you go back. You return to and reestablish your mind on that former concentration sign. You basically go back to the basics, maybe the earlier jhana practice, and solidify that foundation.
Ah, so you don't just keep pushing into the advanced state if the base isn't solid.
Exactly. You reinforce the foundation. Then, the text says, when you try again, minding internal emptiness or external or both or the imperturbable, then the mind will incline, settle, become firm, and be liberated. It really highlights persistence, the right technique, and crucially building on a stable base.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not just about theory, it's technique. So how does this state manifest in just, like, everyday life?
Well, the text talks about how this internal emptiness shows up in all your postures, whether you're walking, standing, sitting, or lying down.
How so?
If your mind inclines to, say, walking, you walk. But with the inner knowledge that because of this cultivated emptiness, those evil, unwholesome states like greed, ill will, covetousness, they just won't arise. Or if they flicker, they don't take hold.
So the inner state protects you from negativity, regardless of the outer action.
That's the idea. The same applies if you're standing, sitting, or lying down. It's about maintaining that inner freedom from mental pollutants, that mindful stillness, whatever your body is doing. It's aiming for a 247 kind of awareness.
Okay. And does this extend to what you say?
Oh, absolutely. Mindful speech is crucial. The Buddha draws a very clear line between two kinds of talk. First, the talk to avoid.
What falls into that category?
Basically anything low, vulgar, worldly, ignoble, unbeneficial. Talk that doesn't lead towards liberation, towards nibbana. The text gives a long list of examples.
Like what?
Like talk about kings, robbers, ministers, armies, war, food, drink, clothes, beds, garlands, scents, relatives, vehicles, villages, towns, cities, countries, even gossip about women, heroes, streets, watering places, past spirits. Varied talks, world gossip, ocean gossip, talk about whether things exist or don't exist.
Wow, that covers a lot of ground. Pretty much all small talk, it sounds like.
A lot of it, yeah. The principle is clear. Any conversation that's superficial, unhelpful, or pulls you away from inner peace and insight is best avoided if you're serious about this path.
Okay, so what's the alternative? What's the talk to embrace?
That's talk that cleanses, talk that supports mental examination, talk that actively leads towards disillusionment, dispassion, cessation, tranquility, higher knowledge, enlightenment, nibbana.
Can you give examples of that?
Sure. The text mentions talk about having few wishes, about contentment, seclusion, non-entanglement, talk that arouses energy, talk about morality, concentration, wisdom, liberation, and the knowledge and vision of liberation itself.
So focusing conversation on things that actually support the path.
Exactly. It's about using speech constructively to build yourself and others up spiritually, rather than just filling silence or getting bogged down in distractions.
And I assume this applies to thoughts too.
You got it. Same principle. There are thoughts to avoid. Low, vulgar, worldly ones. Sensual thoughts, ill will thoughts, harmful thoughts. Anything driven by greed, hatred, or delusion, basically.
Makes sense. And the thoughts to embrace.
Those are the noble thoughts, the leading out thoughts. Thoughts that actively lead towards the complete end of suffering. So thoughts of renunciation, thoughts of non-ill will or kindness, thoughts of non-harming or compassion. It's a total alignment, actions, speech, and thoughts, all pointing towards liberation.
It sounds like a very comprehensive practice covering everything.
It is. And it requires constant vigilance, constant self-awareness. The text really stresses the importance of continual self-assessment.
How so? What should you be assessing?
Particularly your relationship with sensual desires. It talks about regularly examining the 5 strands of sensual pleasure.
Which are?
Visible forms, sounds, smells, tastes, and tactile objects. Things we see, hear, smell, taste, touch. The text describes them as desirable, agreeable, charming, beautiful, connected with sensuality, passion-arousing, the usual suspects that grab our attention.
Right. So what do you do with them?
You constantly ask yourself, honestly, do thoughts of desire arise in me regarding any of these 5 strands, or the sense doors they come through?
Okay, so it's an internal check-in.
Exactly. And the key is honest self-awareness. If desire does arise, you simply understand, okay, my desire for these things is not yet abandoned. If desire doesn't arise, you understand, it is abandoned in this moment.
So it's not about beating yourself up if desire is there, but just noticing it clearly.
Precisely. It's about cultivating that honest observation, knowing your inner landscape without judgment. That awareness itself is transformative.
What else is involved in this self-assessment?
Another key practice mentioned is contemplating the arising and passing away, the constant change of the 5 aggregates of clinging.
Remind us what those are again.
Sure. Their form, our body, feeling pleasant, unpleasant, neutral sensations, perception, how we label things, mental formations, our habits, volitions, thoughts, and consciousness, basic awareness. These are the building blocks of our subjective experience, what we tend to mistake for a solid self.
Right. So contemplating how these are always changing, what does that do?
By seeing their impermanent, fluctuating nature directly, you start to dismantle that deep-seated belief, that conceit of I am as memano, that feeling that I am this body, or I am these feelings, or I am these thoughts, as some fixed, unchanging entity.
So seeing the components as changing processes undermines the idea of a solid, permanent self.
Exactly. You realize they're all interconnected, dependent processes, not a static thing. And letting go of that, clinging to a fixed self, is a major step towards liberation from suffering. The text sums up these practices by calling them exclusively wholesome, noble, transcendent, unvanquished by evil. Powerful stuff.
It really is. Okay, so near the end, Ananda asks the Buddha a really interesting question. He asks why a disciple should keep following the teacher, even if the teacher seems to be, dismissing them or sending them away, like we discussed earlier.
Yeah, it's a practical question. If the teacher is focused on seclusion, why stick around?
And the Buddha's answer is fascinating. He says, it's not to hear the standard discourses, the suttas, and so on. He basically says, you guys already know that stuff. You've heard it, remembered it, pondered it, penetrated it.
That's a crucial point, isn't it? It suggests the relationship goes beyond basic instruction.
Totally. So what is the true purpose then, according to the Buddha?
He brings it back to that special kind of talk we discussed earlier. A disciple should follow the teacher to hear, talk that cleanses, supports mental examination, talk that actually leads to disillusionment, dispassion, cessation, tranquility, higher knowledge, enlightenment, nibbana.
So it's about accessing that specific kind of liberating guidance, not just rehashing the basics.
Exactly. The teacher is there to actively guide the mind towards liberation, using speech as a tool for that deeper transformation.
This then leads into a section about 3 kinds of afflictions or obstacles.
Yeah.
Upadava. What are those?
Right, this is quite revealing. First, there's the teacher's affliction. A teacher seeks seclusion, gets good at it, but then maybe householders or followers start seeking them out, and the teacher gets attached to the attention, maybe greedy, and turns back towards the crowds, losing their secluded state.
Okay, so the teacher stumbles. What's the second?
The disciple's affliction. A disciple sees the teacher seeking seclusion, emulates it, gets good at it too, but then when people inevitably seek them out, they also fall into the same trap. Attachment, greed, turning back to the crowd. They follow the teacher's example, even in the stumble.
Okay, so replicating the teacher's weakness. What's the third one? This is the one that sounds most serious.
It is. It's called the fellow practitioner's affliction. Here, the Buddha contrasts himself. He seeks seclusion, people approach him, but he doesn't get caught by attachment or greed. He maintains his state.
Right.
However, a disciple of the Buddha, someone practicing alongside him, a fellow practitioner, emulates the Buddha's seclusion. But when people approach that disciple, the disciple does get caught by attachment and greed, unlike the Buddha.
Ah, so the disciple tries to follow the perfect example, but still falls short where the Buddha succeeds.
Exactly. And here's the really stark warning. The text says this affliction, the fellow practitioners, is more painful in result, more bitter in result, and leads to ruin compared to the other two.
Wow. Why is it worse?
It seems to emphasize the immense personal responsibility involved, even with a perfect guide right there. If you don't fully internalize and live the practice, if you succumb to those attachments despite the example, the consequence is heavier. You can't just coast on being near wisdom. You have to embody it. Falling short when the path is so clearly shown is, in a sense, a greater failure.
That really puts the onus on the individual practitioner. So how does the Buddha advise navigating this teacher-student dynamic then?
He gives very direct advice. Treat me as a friend, not as an enemy that will be for your long-term welfare and happiness.
Friend versus enemy. How does he define that?
Treating him as an enemy means disciples don't listen, they don't pay attention, they don't apply their minds to really know the teachings, and they actively turn away from the instruction. They resist.
Okay, closing themselves off. And treating him as a friend.
That means disciples do listen, they do pay attention, they do apply their minds to gain knowledge, and crucially, they do not turn away from the instruction. It's about active engagement, openness, receptivity, being willing to hear and apply the teachings even when difficult.
That makes sense. And then there's this final, powerful image he uses, the potter's analogy.
Yes, it's a very strong conclusion. He basically says, look, I'm not going to strive with you like a potter handles delicate, unfired pots, meaning he won't coddle or be overly gentle in a way that avoids the core issues.
So no kid gloves.
Right. He continues, I will speak to you by breaking down and by sifting out. What is essence will remain.
Breaking down and sifting out.
It underscores the direct, even uncompromising nature of his teaching method. It's designed to cut through the non-essential, to challenge assumptions, to break down misconceptions like breaking flawed pots, and to sift through everything until only the pure, essential truth, the essence, remains for the listener to grasp.
That's a powerful metaphor for the teaching process.
Yeah.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what's the big takeaway for us today?
Well, I think the profound wisdom here is that this ancient quest for internal emptiness isn't just about running off to a cave. It's about a really deep, disciplined cultivation of your own mind.
Right, an internal practice.
Yeah, one that frees us from the endless cycle of distractions and attachments that, as the text shows, ultimately lead to suffering and prevent us from gaining real insight.
And connecting that back to us, the listener, the learner, in today's world, how often are we metaphorically delighting in company? You know, lost in the digital crowd, the social media buzz, the information fire hose.
Often at the expense of our own clarity, our own peace, our own deep understanding. Are we just consuming endlessly without digesting? Engaging without real inner stillness? This text really challenges us to look at that balance or imbalance in our own lives and to cultivate that internal quiet.
Definitely food for thought. And for a final provocative thought for everyone listening, think about that potter's analogy. How might that apply to your own journey of learning and growth? What are the unfired pots in your mind? Assumptions, biases, half-baked ideas that maybe need to be broken down and sifted out to reveal what's truly essential.
And perhaps consider, how could approaching knowledge, even difficult or challenging truths, with the mindset of a friend to the teaching, being open and receptive rather than an enemy who resists, how could that fundamentally change your ability not just to be well-informed, but to find a deeper, more resilient sense of peace?